We did a poll on the Daily HiFi Instagram about, I should check to see where we're at. Well, I guess it's over. But we wanted to see like who believes in measurements, right? And it was like, I think it was like 70%. Like I was hoping at least 90 something, but like 70, I'm like, that's still low. 60, 70%.
I think here's the
believe
thing.
in it. I'm like, man, that's a lot of people who don't then. That's
I wonder if it's that they don't believe in it or it's just not that interesting to them. Like, because some people
I think
really
that they don't
care.
understand it.
And and that too. But that's what
I think it's a lack of understanding.
Partially, they're just not interested in it. They just want to know.
I think they're not interested because they don't understand how it applies to them and that it does actually apply to them. Like, measurements do matter. I can show you exactly why they matter. Yeah. I mean, it's easy. Give me 2 minutes. Yeah. But people don't seem to, I don't know, man. You get into that whole crazy thought people. I mean, people believe in weird stuff, right? Yeah. I mean, you can start rattling a list off of things that people believe in. So you tell them it really is just like anti-science people, and I'm like
crazy Scientologists. Like,
you know what I think it is? Maybe we started off in this hobby, right, with not as much information as we have now, and so it's kind of like they just followed that trend, right? So even though now we have all kinds of access to measurements, and it's kind of like that's not how we did it. You just listen.
Right.
So well, that's maybe it's that.
Well, Joe, you made the point that I think is really important. It's not that it's the end all be all. It's the guide. It's to help you as a consumer, and so that's what I try to do through my channel. That's what you try to do. That's what a lot of people who provide measurements is. They try to provide that to people so they can have a better understanding, not just how it's going to perform in your room, because that's the one thing Andrew said in his video that was just categorically wrong. Is he said once you put it in your room, all those measurements go out the window, and that's not true. The measurements are a means to predict what is actually going to happen in your room, and it is within about plus or minus 2 dB of error. That's really good. If I can tell you what this speaker is going to do in your room within plus or minus 2 dB of error, and you can make a purchase decision off of that, dude, that's gravy. That makes it so much easier for somebody. They don't have to go out and just buy a $1,000 speaker and just hope that it's good. They'll say, oh, I know it's going to be pretty good, But yeah, I don't know. People just get
follow
caught
up on
that. Stuff.
The plus or minus 2 dB, is that does that apply also in the bass?
No.
Region?
So that would be above the Schroeder frequency because the bass just wrecks the response, and you do need DSP or multi subs, both ideally. But above that is really what matters too, because that's where all the room interaction is as far as like determining 3D sense of space, height, width, depth of your soundstage, and timbre. I still say timbre. It's supposed to be pronounced timbre. First time I heard somebody say that, I was like, I think they said it wrong. Googled it, found out I was wrong. Yeah. Timbre. Yeah. But anyway.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Some people don't know how to separate the two out, right?
Right.
Like you're saying, there's some intricacies, like the bass, it doesn't apply. So when you say that statement, some people will be like, well, that's completely false because if I put a speaker in the corner, that's not how it measured in that one chart. Well, I mean, there's more to know, I guess.
Yeah, I just wish that video that we're talking about by Andrew was more informed. There was too many broad generalizations that were stated, and that's what concerned me because, as you said, he's got a ton of people following him, and his videos look great. Whether or not, I agree with some of his assessments, that's out the window. But that video, the comments that he made about measurements was just misinformed. And I think that's the best way to put it. So, but everybody seemed to have, you did a video, Joe, and then Gene did one. And I was like, well, it's very ironic too, because now that I'm setting all this stuff up to start my measurements with a near field scanner, I was going to do a video on, hey, these are the things you're looking for in the measurements. And I was like, I think I'm going to hold off, give everything a week so I don't look like I'm piggybacking on this stuff because it's totally separate. But anyway, it's a mess. But yeah, measurements absolutely matter. The real thing is, what measurements to look at, how do you understand them, and that takes time. And I think that's why people don't want to or don't care. Maybe kind of going back to what Shauna said, they're just lazy, So I'll spoon feed you. You guys come over to my channel. I'll spoon feed you. I'll tell you what it means.
I think I think a lot of people actually don't know what they're hearing. Like in like whenever we go to these hi-fi shows, these guys are just trying to listen to this track. Okay, so listen to the way that dude, shut the fuck up and let me hear the damn thing. Like, I know what the song is.
The speaker tongue.
Oh, the tongue. I made a tongue.
Right.
The guy made a freaking tongue, right? So the speaker was like this, and then there was a tongue. It's like Michael's video. there's a tongue that was like this far out. And I was just like, what is this? I mean, the reasoning behind it was kind of cool. But man, he was really hyped up on the tongue, right? So, like,
it's weird.
Everybody hears, differently. So
yeah, absolutely. One more reason to have measurements.
You might be prone to, more of a piercing high end than like you like that, as opposed to somebody else. So maybe you want something that's a little bit more colored. Maybe, I know my wife hates like super high pitched stuff, like in the 8 to 10K. So like anytime I'm playing something that is bright, like I wait till she's in the other room, and more so now because we, she doesn't have a job because of COVID,
right.
So whenever I'm reviewing stuff or just, playing loud music, usually I don't play the overly bright stuff, because that hurts her ears. That hurts her. And I just know because I know, I've been, messing around with frequencies and stuff like that, producing music and stuff. So half the time, like if you're in one of those rooms, like I've heard some whoppers. Like when Joe and I were at Walmart, Kmart, whatever. And,
Walmart. Yeah.
And in this like $60 soundbar, dude's like, oh yeah, that'll sound better than a full Atmos setup. We just like,
yeah,
what?
Wow.
What did you just
We gotta
say?
get this on video.
Yeah.
that was it's stuff like that. Like people are like, I'm like sitting in this room. I'm like, dude, that's not what's happening. You are you deaf? Or so I think a lot of it is like people think they know, and maybe the measurements really just show that they have no idea what they're hearing.
I see Reginald saying, I agree with you. You said you need measurements, but that's not the whole story, right?
Yep.
And so to add to what Aaron was saying earlier, I think that it's also important to know what the limitations of those measurements are, like what they're telling you and what they cannot tell you, right? So for example, when I do my in-room measurements, I always like say, this is an in-room measurement. I'm not building any speakers here. I'm not like making specs for somebody's website. I'm just saying this is how it's performing here, right? And you need to understand what that means, right? And so I saw in Aaron's latest video, he's tweaking the mic so that he's getting less reflections off this like little tiny, piece. And so he's on a different level of accuracy, right?
Yep.
So my measurements aren't that accurate, but I think like if you zoom out, right? If you zoom out, you're like, okay, that's the general correct response that I'm measuring, right?
Right.
And so I know the limitations of my measurements, and I think that's important too.
It was funny. The one time I showed the measurements of what Anthem room correction was doing to my subwoofer. Someone's like, you measured it wrong. It's like, great. Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Last time I'm doing that.
Yeah. Well, so piggybacking off of what Joe said, and I think this is a perfect example. So Joe does in-room measurements. Now, with anechoic data, you can measure the speaker outside of a room, take all the influence of the room out, then through some weighting of some different curves and things like that, you can provide what is called a predicted in-room response. In all the speakers that I've tested so far, I have taken that predicted in-room response from anechoic measurements, overlaid that to a moving microphone measurement, just sitting in the mic in my home theater seat or whatever and waving the mic around. And that in-room response matches almost ideally to the predicted in-room response. And so, yes, we've shown that it actually matters. The science from anechoic measurements can match what you would get in a room in 2 different rooms in my case. So what I'm doing then is I'm providing that information to everybody. So then you don't have to go out and you don't have to buy that speaker and measure it in your room. I'm doing it for you. I'm basically telling you what it's going to do in most rooms. And then if you have that speaker, if you have any of the speakers that I've tested or somebody else has tested, then you can say, well, this is the thing I liked about it. We can sync it up to the measurements, and then you can make, more informed purchase decisions later. It's not, again, people misunderstand it. It's not to tell you that this speaker is perfect, although it can tell you if a speaker is really good or bad, but more so is to help you correlate what you like with what the performance is. So you're not buying blind. You're not just going out to Amazon, or you're not going to Best Buy.
But that's kind of like how people are buying these days.
I know.
Right? They're buying all online, right?
Yeah, and they don't have to. I mean, they can buy online, but they don't have to just guess, is what I'm trying to say. Right. I can tell you from the measurements with reliability that this is how it's going to perform in most people's room.
Why
would you not want that extra information?